And welcome back to the EMEA Masters Spring Finals, where we see the Istanbul Wildcats finally find their claws and take down the rampaging Unicorns of Love. It is 2-1 still for the Unicorns, but it's great to see the Wildcats finally find something that works for them. A lot of it coming from what they did in game one, but actually executing it well in the mid-game as well, Jamada.
Yeah, it just felt like this was the game one that should have happened 2 games ago to give them the series lead. So I'm glad that they kind of just stuck to their guns in a way, right? Not putting Parus again on another utility support, though this time I think it would have been a little bit harder to pull off. And generally, I think the agency that gives them, they're a different team, like plain and simple. So, you know, they could have very easily won game 1. They executed on game 3, and now it's about recollecting themselves and making sure they stay in their own identity to try and keep giving the fight to Unicorns.
Yeah, I definitely think so. Brox, you've been in this sort of situation a lot of times in best of 5 series. A lot of people talk of game 3 as kind of the crux. If you win game 3, often you can carry that momentum through the rest of the series. Would you agree with that?
I think it's a bit tricky because the way that I look at it from what we've seen so far, Unicorns have so many tools available, and Wildcats are just trying to find bandages that, you know, they can use to kind of stop the bleeding and find a way back in. And it is clear at this point they need their jungler and their support and playmakers. They need to be able to play aggressive and generate a lead, because if they don't, it's so hard for them to win. And even here, they got the lead. They almost threw it away. So I'm not sure if they're going to be able to pull this off again. I hope for the sake of the series they can, but you know, playmakers are really the name of the game, or the name of the series.
Yeah, especially for support role. Like, getting that Blitzcrank is just so important for the Wildcats. Parus, once again, having an incredible performance on it, and it feels like the Unicorns, it's not about disrespect to the pick, because even if you respect Blitzcrank, often you are caught out by it, but it seems sometimes they're a little bit surprised by Parus's ability to roam around the map.
Yeah, it seems to be. I'm not sure why though, because it's kind of what Parus does. So whether it's kind of just a bit of a jitters situation in this game where they start to fall behind and they're like, oh man, we're so close to winning the series, all of a sudden the game is hard. We'll have to see how they look in terms of the confidence moving into game 4. I still think, I'm wondering when they're just going to pull out the Galio, to be honest with you, because it's not like it's really been pitched away from them too much. Because that again, that seemed like their secret sauce moving all the way up towards finals. And I'm wondering now that they've lost the game, whether or not they're going to kind of just pull it out as a bit of a secret weapon.
I think now would be the perfect time to do it, because really, it's just going to be all about early game, I think. You get a good early game for yourself, you stop the playmaking coming out of Wildcats, and then Unicorns are going to be fine. Like, I think overall they've shown that they are, up until now, the better team. And if they can go even, pretty high chance they're going to come out on top.
It definitely feels like their team fighting really shines. We saw that a little bit in this game as well, even though they were 3, 4, 5k behind. Venour, especially on the Cassante, just constantly finding Bao, making sure that he was taken out of the fight. And after you get rid of Bao, you really take away a lot of the power that the Wildcats have.
Yeah, and I mean, in this game, they had a pretty fat Tristana as well. So it still feels like Wildcats, even in situations where perhaps they don't necessarily just have to lean on Bao, they kind of still are in this very weird way. So I do want to see some kind of swap up to maybe give Destroy more agency, but again, you know, we heard Trouble say in the cast, well, whenever you play for the jungle at any point, you're always losing something a lot more, or the top side rather, you're always losing something a little more important. So I think for Wildcats, agency still remains the overall theme. I'm just wondering whether or not they're going to feel the need to change where the agency is coming from.
And the big problem for them in this series has also been that Destroy just hasn't played the way he has so far. Like, for the rest of the tournament, you look at this guy, he's just stomping opponents on carries every game. And Venour is, every game, just one step ahead. Like, you can't seem to shut him down. So Destroy on a carry could potentially be, you know, the difference maker. But like you said, you can't really give him too much attention, because at the end of the day, Bao and Funky are the 2 people who can make a big difference and carry the late game team fights.
It definitely feels like a lot of this displacement and the ability to maneuver around team fights is what really won this out for Wildcats, because you didn't just have the hook. As much as the hook was very important, you also had the explosive cast. You had the ability for the Xayah to reposition and get those feathers down, and so it made it very tricky for Funky, even though there were fights where he could clean up. often he'd be on the front foot, then caught, then die, and then the fight really goes in the favor of Wildcats. And I do want to talk a little bit about the draft as well as we come out of this this post-game breakdown and just discuss exactly how you guys would want to change things up if you're the Unicorns, because we've now seen the Blitzcrank twice in the early game. Wildcats have been able to get a lead through Parus on this Blitzcrank. If you're Unicorns, where do you right the ship? How do you course correct, Jamada?
I think that the Unicorns have shown us, especially over the course of the last 3 series, this one included, that they look the best under 2 conditions, right? They have the ability to force numbers advantage really quickly, or they are the ones with the reactive tools to engage. It feels like if they're the ones with the proactive tools that like they want to force end first, sometimes they miss the mark a little bit, right? So I feel like if they can find that perfect mix of either being able to create numbers advantages first or just plainly drafting fully reactively, I think they have a better chance. I mean, we saw game 1 is kind of a bit of an example of it, where they had the Cassiopeia plus the Xayah. They're never going in with those 2 champions. They're waiting for the end for Wildcats to come in, and then they punish on the missteps.
I think it's going to be a balance, like you're saying, between finding aggression, finding scaling. I think for them, the scaling should come from bot lane, perhaps top, and then we saw in game 2, if we get the mid and jungle on strong early game focused champions like the Lee and Lissandra, they can really shine and have an impact, and they can bring them through the early game and to a winning position in the mid and late game. And that's what I want to see from them, like just strong scaling team fighting from bot lane and top, early game mid jungle, ideally deny, the Blitzcrank or similar champions from Parus. Of course, easier said than done, but that should be their main goal going into this one.
It might even be one of those positions where instead of banning a Thresh, you ban a Blitzcrank. And it's like, we know that Thresh gives you some safety. We understand what that champion does, but it gets rid of that go, bust, and engage potential from Parus in the bot lane, which has really been what has allowed Wildcats to get these early leads. And alongside that, Bao to get in such a good position because he, across the course of the tournament, has been the carry. When you look at the Wildcats, you say, is Bao going to get ahead? If he is, he's going to be able to carry through team fights. And we've seen that across the course of these games.
Yeah, and it feels like, for Bao, it's kind of starting off as Parus is the platform to be climbed upon to then really take over the games, right? So I think you're right. Maybe from the Unicorns' perspective, they look at it and they go, all right, remove that certain agency tool via the Blitz, and then this guy doesn't have, a game or end up
1.1k damage a minute,
because it just feels like if Bao's given space, he's proving again, like we said in the pre-show, that he will just be Mr. Consistent as long as he's actually got the maneuverability to not get immediately pounced on by the entirety of the Unicorns.
And Unicorns will be on blue side for this next draft. They've decided to be on it. It's the first time I think we're seeing the Unicorns on the blue side as well. It was Wildcats, Wildcats, Wildcats. So now that does give them, or maybe it was the other way around for game 1. Anyway,
game 1.
Yeah, but Unicorns won game 1. So perhaps they're back to their winning ways in getting that blue side. Does give you that little bit more flexibility in the draft, and you can even look to prioritize something like the Xayah if you want.
And what we saw from them in game 1 was just banning 3 junglers away, including the Gragas that we just saw Elramir have an amazing game on. And I think it would make some sense for them to go back to a style like that, just ban out the jungle pool, get a favored jungle champion for yourself, because you don't have to put yourself in a position where you blind pick Thresh early in the draft. You can just, either pick something slightly different or save your support pick for later. So there's no easy Blitzcrank angle for Parus.
What do you think, Jamada? Do you agree with Broxer?
I agree with Broxer wholeheartedly. I think if you, I mean, Blitz is just that champion where he makes or breaks the game, right? He's either hitting no hooks and he's completely useless and he's walking around like a robot, ha ha ha, or he's hitting every hook in the world and it just feels really oppressive and you have no answer to it. So I think for now, the immediate band-aid for Unicorns is just remove the Blitzcrank. Whether you want to do it first 3 or not, it's entirely their discretion. But I think trying to make sure that Parus is on as little game-changing champion as possible, like the Blitz or a hook champion in general, they should be okay.
There's a lot of champions easier to deal with than Nautilus, who still will fit that engaged position that Wildcats probably want. Anyway, we're going to head over to the casters for what could be the final game of the EMEA Masters Spring. Guys, take it away.
Indeed, it could be. And I do want to start with that conversation because Wildcats...
Did you see his fabulous spin?
I did. It was actually really well timed.
I don't really want to try it with like the cable.
He's just going for the Garen cosplay. Mage Seeker came out. He was a big Hades player. It's in the same kind of vibe.
We did see a couple of Garens this tournament,
It's
weirdly.
I wasn't going in that angle, but now here we are.
Back on track. Back on track. Let's go.
I want to do a little bit of celebrate with Wildcats, because of course they were backs against the wall. Bao, not in the game, comes out with a 1.1k damage game. Off the back, as we're stating on the desk, of Parus' Blitzcrank once again. Phenomenal game from him. Do you kind of agree it needs to be gotten rid of?
Potentially, but on the subject of Bao, Wildcats are a very storied and proud org over in Turkey.
Yeah.
They have their fans' hearts. This org had repeatedly had full Turkish rosters, and now for the first time ever, they bring 2 Koreans. And they need to step up. And Bao has. For me, the biggest question mark is, can Destroy step up in this particular series as well? Because Venour has had his number, even on the 1v1, for the entire series.
Going back to the Blitzcrank point, I don't know whether it needs to be banned. It's just that you need to be aware that it will come out if you have another composition, which can be flipped by some early players of the Blitzcrank getting value.
Yep.
Yeah, I mean, there's a chance. I mean, what happens if you don't have, say, for instance, what happens if Kasante's gone? Do you have another answer into the Blitzcrank hooker that way? That was great for them in previous games versus that Blitzcrank, sure. But you need to be very aware of that. And of course, with coaching staffs as storied as well on the Unicorns of Love side, they are not going to sit there and kind of take that easily. They're a team which has continually kind of reassessed and adapted very, very well. They've taken their lumps and they've come out ahead. Going into draft to game 4, let's see what they think of it.
Eyes have gone in 2 different directions here. Trouble's called out Destroy, wanting him to be a bigger part of the carries. He had some good damage numbers in the first 2 games, but it does feel like Venour has been largely the better top lane in some ways. And of course, on the other side, that we have got to say, look, Bao, Parus, when they're ahead, have been very, very scary, and whether Unicorns have got the answers in here. Some of the bans already through. Gragas, Wukong, Vi, all the way from Elramir. It's the Lee Sin as well. That jungle pool is getting very limited already.
This is just a rinse and repeat of game 1, right? Unicorns of Love, they banned the exact same 3 champions, and I feel I don't blame them, especially the Gragas. After the performance in the last game, you gotta shut it down, because when you go into a best-of with momentum of the previous win, all right, here, Maokai open, Sejuani is open, so there's gonna be a trade right there now. Which one of the 2 mid laners, though, wants to pair it up with either a melee or an AD champ?
So Maokai, we called this out a little earlier in the series and we saw it before, is typically the responding champion. Maokai is a champion that doesn't necessarily want to be the person flashing forward for the first gank. They want to be flashing onto someone who's already started ganking. They're a counter ganker. Something like the Sejuani, they feel a little more aggressive. And with something like that, Sejuani, it also allows you to play through some melee synergies on the top side of the map, which can be very powerful.
A little bit of a fun fact. When it comes to Sejuani and Maokai, both of these junglers have played one of the champions 6 times, and it's their preferable choice.
It's the other way around, though.
Which has been swapped around. Peach is usually the one going for the Sejuani, because you of course can have melee mid laners, and Elramir is the one who usually goes for the Maokai.
I mean, I literally went to look that up myself, looked right there, so I was like, thank you, Georgie, we're on the right mind.
Here.
Or right page, rather. The Jinx comes through, and potentially for the first time this series, Annie being hovered very potent earlier on in the season, falling out of favor a little.
I'm going to throw this out here. I wonder if you just lock in Kasante right now and say, look, you haven't been able to deal with the Kasante, even with Canada, just lock it in.
Nice.
Because you see Destroy, and we were talking about, hey, Destroy, red side draft, great for them, because Destroy can counter pick that top side. That's how you can win one of these, it feels like the harder draft on red side. But they already tried the counter pick before. They've tried the Rumble, and they've tried the Fiora, and it has not worked. They've lost the individual matchup. Yes, they won the Fiora game, but that wasn't due to the top side counter pick.
See, Caster 101, never talk about the hovers. You're absolutely right about the Kasante, and I love the points you're bringing up there.
Just close your eyes.
Georgia, you were really adamant about it. You want to see Destroy, especially now he's got the option for the counter pick, to find an answer into Venour, who has largely been the more impactful top laner. Don't get me wrong, Destroy first 2 games, good damage numbers, good lane, but hasn't been the one to carry. What can he do here into, again, Venour's Kasante?
I'm completely willing to delete game 1 with the Rumble into the Kasante, and I'm like, what new do you have into this Kasante? Because this guy can play anything from tanks to AP carries to AD carries to fighters to bruisers, anything. What do you have to counter one of these champions that is neither a bruiser nor a tank, but has gotten so many solo kills in the top lane globally?
I think what's difficult here as well is that you don't just have to pick something that will deal okay with the Kasante, also has to be able to potentially reach the Jinx, potentially impact these team fights. Something like that Gwen is the best of both worlds. The ultimate flies through the Kasante while you're hitting him, and then goes into the back line as well. Now, Unicorns, they're gonna ban the Blitzcrank. That's what I was gonna ask you. So how have Wildcats flipped some early games? It's a certain hook champion.
There's still
but
Nautilus.
Still Pike. I'm just saying. I mean, this surely is a 4th pick Nautilus, so you're absolutely right. It does leave open something like a Braum into it, though, because Nautilus into Braum is a horrible experience.
I think maybe you either lock and rumble or Gnar here. It's going to be either of the Yordles would be fine into K'Sante. It was actually one of the best lanes that Destroy has had in this particular series. His rumble into Venour's K'Sante. He did lose his flash later on though, so we have to wait and see how the matchup goes. Now, if of course the Braum gets knocked in here, that is 3 melees on the side of Unicorns of Love. And I know we don't talk about hovers, but it's very likely for the follow-up right here. So Braum could be a fantastic choice into 3 melee champions. And if Mask chooses to go for something like the Galio or the Yone, that is 4.
And Tristana's pretty good into a lot of things, not great into a Nautilus ult, so even if we're coming into these late game team fights, it's not about that lane matchup, but that Nautilus ult could be very, very impactful. So it's not going to be the Cassiopeia as it was in game 1. It's going to be the Viktor locked in for Mask.
Galio.
This is going to be a pretty awkward moment. Tristana is pretty good into a lot of champions in mid lane, and was initially, when she came into the meta as a mid laner, good into mages. Not great into Viktor. Viktor dumps all of his spells into that Tristana, and she can struggle in this matchup.
Worth keeping our eyes on that. I feel like Mask pretty happy with that lock-in. What is going to be that last pick support? It's not a hook, but it is engaged. I'm looking at Georgia shaking her head. She's not pleased.
In a series where the games have been decided by mid-jungle synergy, by mid-jungle push, by invades, by strong early 2 versus 2s, bundling up a Viktor with a Maokai does me a little dirty here. I want to see Peach and Mask take care of that early game. Sejuani showing up mid, the early aggression from Tristana, so you can match the push of a Viktor. I'm leaning a lot towards Wildcats here.
I'm looking at some disagreement potential now. I've got disagreement.
I've lost lane against Viktor an awful lot of times, Sam. I haven't eaten enough combos for Viktor. As many things. Turns out Viktor's been meta ever since Season 5, and I've eaten a lot of death rays to the faces.
Don't worry, he'll get the Azir treatment soon.
We'll have to see about that one. Can potentially contend push, but that mid-jungle CB2 will call it out. Part of it's on play, part of it's on champions. Who gets the push there might well determine this game.
Who turns up towards the bot lane, or occasionally the top lane if there was an Aurelia in there. That was with the fact with game 2, very important to the outcomes of these games. Unicorns of Love were so very close to the clean sweep, so very close to a 3-0 and a dominant series. Wildcats fight back. They have made the first step in what will be a few if they want to get towards a reverse sweep. To the Rift we go. One more time. Can Unicorns close the series, or will Wildcats continue to claw their way back to the series? All puns intended.
Okay, immediately loading onto the Rift. Important things to note. There's going to be an Airy on the Viktor. It's not going to be Spellbook. It's not going to be something like that. It does give you a little bit more ability to poke out. Someone like a Tristana, very good at shoving. Until you build up your first item, though, and you build up that Vamp Scepter, you are susceptible to getting poked out, particularly because you don't outrange the Viktor until much later into the game.
Worth noting as well, Peach has once again gone for the first strike, and that red item from the jungle, the Scorch Claw, is looking to go for the AP Varus again. Oh, AP Varus, AP Maokai.
Cool. I mean,
I'm not going to talk about
Please
Pokemon.
do not play that champion in jungle. I will report you myself, dear
I was
brother.
about to say that when Varus was meta, Poke Varus, Maokai could very well accompany him in the bot lane as his support. So they kind of match in playstyle. Now, of course, what's going to be very important here, I feel like, is first jungle clear, because both Maokai and Sejuani kind of facilitators that want to be starting the fights. They don't necessarily want to be brawling with each other. So a lot of priority on the map, figuring out where the junglers are and setting up that mid lane 2v2 so you can bleed the pressure ball is going to be the name of the game, as it has been for the entire series. Oh, starting strong.
So use the bone plating, taking the first E of the game. That won't be up for another wave. It's okay here.
See, you can usually take the bone plating with just an auto tag, but it's fine.
I will say the explosive charge on that Tristana skin, it's actually quite distressing. Like, it gives you quite a lot of like anxiety listening to the ramp up on that sound effect. Bot lane, Parus is the one with what have we got?
The junglers are clearing to bot side.
What?
No, so actually, this is something I was looking at. I was looking at some of the heat maps where the junglers end up later into the game. It's just an easy way to kind of pass through a lot of data very quickly. At 4 minutes, which is kind of just after your first clear's ended and you've hung around the map for a little bit, Elramir has basically never been topside. It's all about this bot side. Sometimes hangs a little bit closer to mid lane than he does to bot lane, but it's always in and around that bot side river. Currently clearing through that top side very, very quickly, particularly when you have a Leona as your one melee synergy towards that bot side as well. With a lot of CC, it can be very easy to set up for.
Now, Peach has been spotted at half HP in his jungle. Tristana has prior mid lane, and they've been perma-pinging that opening on the map. Kofte put his ward down right on the opening of that jungle, so I'm wondering if Elramir could actually sprint in. He's not. They're just gonna make sure that Maokai does not pull out a surprise gank through mid lane, which with blue buff is not the easiest to do. Usually it's with red buff, but still covering all angles right there. There was a potential invade from Elramir. They're gonna take this game slow, especially since they're a win behind.
Opening conflicts and skirmishes have pretty regularly been in that bot side river and bot lane in general. Both those junglers, as was in no surprise really whatsoever pointed out by Georgia, all going towards the bot lane.
Bot lane's pinging assistance though from the side of Wildcats. I think they're looking to potentially, potentially crush in that wave. But they do know that Maokai is going to be hanging around that bot side of the map. The wave currently is at a very even state, if you will. So both junglers will be chilling about. Scuttlecrop will go to Elramir.
Yep.
So bot lane safe for now.
And Destroy takes that opportunity to try and zone Venour off that wave, knowing where the junglers are. Even enough right now in that lane, but continue to get the shove at the very least.
And importantly, as it stands, junglers are heading back down again. Neither of these mid laners at this point really want to roam bot, but if it did, because Kofte actually had to jump away in that mid lane, has teleport, maybe looking to reset, get himself back up on the map, should something come about. Of course, he can't teleport onto those minions or onto those wards, but can get back into that mid lane and pin back Unicorn's mid jungle in the next few minutes.
This has kind of become a game of chicken. It's like they're trying to find each other. Instead, there's a Scuttlecrab on the top side river that they could have taken. There's more vision. You can reset and get an
ignited.
item.
Electro Harpoon! Just short, will not sink the great ship Venour, who stays alive this time around, but the flash is blown.
Yeah, that's very good stuff from Destroy. We expected to see some aggression. Rumble in the top lane with Ignite forces Venour out of lane. Of course, Venour will have his teleport up and available, and there won't be a chance for dive right here because Destroy has to reset. But really good stuff to see the Wildcats top laner stepping it up from the laning phase.
Okay, so Destroy, of course, had a lot of damage in that first game as well. Actually cracked over 1,000 DPM in that very first game, but it wasn't enough to get them the win. They had a hell of an early game, but they kind of felt like they got a bit outscaled. That Lissandra diving into the enemy team couldn't quite get it done. Can they do a little bit more this time with the Sejuani having a bit more engage from that jungle as well? Have to see how that one comes across. At least they have the double AD carries, which saw them some success earlier.
Unicorns of Love are also running a very similar composition. Instead of the Thresh, it's the Nautilus. Instead of the Casio, it's the Viktor. It's the same front to back with 3 beefy targets and 2 carries that can dish out consistent mix damage from both ends. So as long as Unicorns of Love go even to that late game, they are most likely outscaling whatever Wildcats throw their way.
Of course, something like that Chaos Storm is going to do so much work if Wildcats position wrong. Mask with a large amount of potential to do similar amounts of damage to as he did on the Cassiopeia in that first game. Vision now kind of being the object of both teams' desire. Topside River was warded out by the Wildcats around that first scuttle coming out. Unicorns match it in bot.
Worth pointing out, of course, on the other side is actually Bao dancing a little close with danger there, but gets out safely enough that your Viktor and your Jinx don't have a Thresh this game, so that equalizer in particular, if Destroy continues to play the lane the way he has been doing, will be coming in some of those team fights with a lot of damage, which will be onto mobile people.
Lekcyc here.
Yeah, I was about to wonder about that as well, but does get to walk his way. And again, both these bot lanes playing a little close to the wire here.
Again, bot lane has really been where the hammer blow first strikes. It's really after that, who's following down at that point? Are the junglers in the right position? Our mid lane is in a position to respond. We can see that Kofte clears away under tower. Just before that, Mask had pushed him into that mid lane out of turret. Dragon is alive. Tristana leaves that mid lane, joins the team in river.
And I mean, arguably, you do have the 280 carries on the side of Wildcats. You do burn through these objectives technically faster, but it's still pretty early into the game. It takes quite longer to do that, and Funky on the Jinx can push down that wave really quickly, so you don't want to be missing out on experience and gold that early. It's just going to be a game of dipping back into Fog of War, gaining some vision control, getting back out. You can see that both teams have very much slowed down. They haven't necessarily even used the fact that Tristana is quite strong in the early game yet. As the Vamp Scepter has to reset right here on a ward.
He's on a ward, but will be left alone this time around. Mask doing as Namera kind of wanted and getting some of those earlier advantages with the poke as with the Airy, but now Destroy, about to be on the wrong end of a gank, trying to use the speed up to get away. Now turns around with the Equalizer. Venour is not enjoying that damage. Won't be flame roasted K'Sante for breakfast though. Destroy avoids that one.
I love how he just like pops Ignite and goes, I've got Nimbus close, move speed, it's fine. Just walks out. This guy just does the damage, walks away.
I feel like also it's really cool because Destroy is actually threatening 1 kill. So even if they do commit that Maokai towards the top side of the map, if Destroy kills Venour, there was also a huge wave Venour would miss out on.
And it's a level 5 Maokai, it's not the level 6. You don't have that Nature's Grasp yet to
He
really
would hand
force.
on the Maokai too!
Yeah, just burn them all down. Make it like the 2 towers and burn down the forest. Destroy will not become a ecological weapon of war quite yet, and just leaves the jungle having been a bit of an irritation while. Now we've got a bit of a gathering in mid lane. Elramir and Parus alongside Lekcyc hanging around here.
This has been a really interesting first couple of objectives. They're looking to force mid.
Don't get the ult on target, but the slow's still pretty good. Ooh. There's the permafrost, mass flash under the tower, but I don't think it's quite enough! Buster Shot claims the kill, and that's first blood, latest, I think, of the damn series, but it's not going to be quite enough as Parus flashing out the Ignite is enough for Lekcyc to turn it around. Now Peach has to flash in the tower, but Lekcyc in a difficult position, trying to find his way beyond Elramir, who's trying to body block and eventually forces the flash. It's a 1-for-1, but the kill allocation and first blood is better for Wildcats.
It's a little bit greedy from Mask. You can see the angle, right? Try and dump down that Chaos Storm, force the Wildcats to overextend. Doesn't quite work out for them. See the power that Mask has, even at the level 6 mark. Cool as a cucumber, dodging out on that ult. This is where the misstep really comes in, though. Kind of presses down that Gravity Storm and says, okay, sure, maybe I can get Chaos Storm, rather. Tries to put down that damage. Just doesn't quite buy enough time. And at that point, I think you probably should have just flashed earlier.
I think also Kofte buffered the Nautilus Q there right before it hit him, so really great stuff from the Wildcats mid laner. But again, did we expect 3 versus 3 in the mid lane? Yes, we did. Nice dodge on the rocket right there, but through that Wildcats prior in the mid lane, through these flashes being burned for the side.
In so much danger, flashes out! Bao gets the solo kill! It's supposed to be Funky using the aggressive flasher. Peach needs to back away. He doesn't win that fight. Bao caught between 2 towers, but just doesn't care. Here comes Lekcyc. I think Bao is dead to rights. Looking to try and execute maybe Bao. Oh, my boy. You're a bun this time around, and it's breakfast instead for the side of the Maokai.
You win the mental war. Bao has won the mental war. 2 AD carries all alone in the bot lane. Bao sees the opportunity. 1 level up and more HP, more stats onto this Xayah. Gets the flash out of Funky as well. And look at these minions that just dying away to the tower. And Funky's just not there to soak up XP and gold.
Yeah, and Xayah also so strong at diving turrets like that. Mask has no flash this time.
Arctic Assault into the Glacial Prison. Do not pass go. Do not pick up 300 gold. Mask dies to Kofte.
Why Maokai and Viktor, man? These teams are living and dying by mid-jungle sword. And this mid-jungle for the side of Unicorns of Love is just so weak in the early game.
The thing is, though, like, you need to even be there as the Maokai. They'd reset. They just killed bot lane. Wildcats, they see that their AD carries died to the Maokai, and you know he's off the map at that point, potentially catching him on that. To be honest, I look at Master there. There's nothing more he can do. He has the damage of the Chaos Storm. Yeah. But both times these plays have happened in mid, his teammates are not there to back him up.
And you could see potentially an angle to turn that round if Peach is there to press R and punish the overdives, but it doesn't happen. It's now 2 kills on this Tristana, and what was good poke out of Mask in the 1v1, he is struggling in the 2v1s, and the lack of it being a 2 or a 3v3 because his support and jungle aren't there this time.
I'm going to give it to Peach. He was playing between tier 1 and tier 2. He wasn't necessarily overextending to try and get that experience, but having so much CC and catch-up potential from the side of Wildcats, I think you need to expect it. Every time you don't see Parus on the map, you need to expect his mid lane. Every time you don't see the Sejuani or haven't spotted him in a while, you need to expect Xayah mid lane. It's how these teams have been playing for the entirety of the tournament, and so far, Wildcats, they're using the strat from game 1 and game 3 to get a hold of that early game.
Also, when you look at Wildcats as well, of all the teams in EMEA Masters, they are the team that have comboed up the best between jungle, mid, and support. Now, we haven't even got to see Kofte's Jace, where it really looks even better than all of these champs they've pulled out so far. Don't think we're going to see that one either. We've got past the era of Bon Joyce. We finally found out the spelling mistake. That one's been removed from this series. But now Kofte is ahead. It's 1,000 gold ahead, 2 kills up, and that means that while in the early 1v1, Kofte was not necessarily able to keep Mask under turret, you are definitely starting to get to that point now. He's starting to punish that Viktor. When it comes to these objectives, Wildcats will have a leg up around that.
Herald summoned in mid lane, 2 plates gone already, and this is a Tristana. This can be a very heavy shove indeed, but instead they'll use that pressure to turn over what could be first dragon. Peach now caught alone in the river. Where is his bot lane? Just not available because they're in a 2v2. Lekcyc taken so low. The feathers have flown, but he's going to be on the wrong side of that. Lekcyc will buy some time, but it's just not enough. In the river, Tristana kills Peach, and it's just a whitewash in favor of Wildcats.
The Wildcats mid, jungle, and then their bot side of the map are just so much more in sync this game. And it feels like now Peach, Mask starting to fall through the cracks a little, not comboing up well together. And this one, they're starting to bleed out more gold than they're comfortable giving over.
I think when your map is falling apart, Peach has done it before, play through top side. This guy's playing Rumble top, extremely mobile. You take his flash, he falls down. Venour has stalled and won games with that Cassandra tried to play for the other side of the map. Right here, we're going to see the brawl towards the bot lane as well. Parus is actually the one engaging. Doesn't necessarily quite hit Funky, but the second iteration of CC will. And Funky pretty much seems free to go, but Lex is soaking up all the damage coming in from Bao meanwhile. Now, there's 3 things that happened right here for Unicorns of Love that were disastrous. 1, mid Herald went mid. That means only 2 tower platings in the mid lane tower. It's gonna fall soon. I just want to remind everyone, Mask died between tier 1 and tier 2. When his tier 1 is not there, he's gonna be even more susceptible to getting caught midway half his lane. 2, Dragon went over to Wildcats, which means they can start stacking. 3, that bot lane has been so consistent this game at getting kills 1v1 and 2v2.
Now, for the first time it's in for a while.
Sorry, Al.
For the first time in a while, Lekcyc is here first in the mid lane. Does at least allow Mask to play a little bit up, clear another wave. Of course, he's got that E upgrade already, heading towards that Ludens as well, which is very good for wave clear at the very least. This probably should have come a little bit earlier, and now at this point as well, because you're falling apart around the bot side of the map, because Lekcyc has gone towards that mid lane, bot lane loses plates to Bao as well.
Attempt number 3, Mask flashes, and we'll get out to Sejuani. Now turnaround comes through the ground, he feels down as well. Kofte does not enjoy that rocket jump and buster chop, disengage Mask. A screen apart for now and no one dies.
Yeah, they're trying to make a play here because in 1 minute the second Rift Herald is coming up, which could potentially open the map for Wildcats. So they're trying to make a play again onto Mask, but very crucially, yes, they don't kill him. Flash is gone. That play in 50 seconds is going to happen, and Mask will have to walk through one of these tight choke points.
Thing is though, again, even in that play, you can see there's a little bit of miscommunication. The damage goes down onto Kofte and not down onto Elramir. Maybe if that hook had come down, would have been a kill participation over to Viktor. Of course, Viktor, when he gets kills and assists, he unlocks his passive more. He gets to upgrade his abilities more. They've held him have Wildcats to 1 assist, and it feels like the Unicorns, they've just been caught a little bit flat-footed around this jungle, mid lane rather.
Yeah, and I was, wondering there with Peach behind and the Lekcyc said what they were looking for a dive, but they decided against it in the end. Peach will head over to this jungle, but Destroy now rotating down to be on the bot side. Looking like they're going to put Tristana into top lane, and you can't blame him.
I don't like this play right here for Wildcats, especially since they've been so dominant on the map. Rift Herald is coming up in 5 seconds. Destroy doesn't have teleport, he has Ignite. Sure, you want to shove more gold into Destroy, being unbothered down in the bot lane, but I feel like a Rumble, when you have to walk through those choke points, our Unicorns of Love is going to be so juicy to put down the flaming carpet and just stop them from entering the river altogether and securing that Rift Herald.
I think they're playing through the next wave. Destroy walking his way back up mid. Does have Flash, Ignite, and that ult. He can definitely get into the play if he wants to. There he goes.
Equalizer will do more than equalize. It is deleting health bars. Lekcyc and Funky down to 20% HP. Tower falls afterwards.
Herald is started.
Yeah, Herald started, and you can see the combo there. Get shoved bot, roam mid, throw down the equalizer, get the turret. And with the Herald, you feel like top tower will surely fall afterwards. A great cascade of plays.
Well realized from the Wildcats to realize that they can just pin the Unicorns against their mid tower and use Destroy's power on that Rumble to keep him there, chunk him out. There was no Herald contest coming after that point.
What was great is that Unicorns of Love felt safe seeing Destroy down the bot lane. Destroy shoves in only 1 wave and then roams mid to put down the equalizer, and they didn't expect to do so much damage. Mask doesn't have a flash, but the very nice zoning Maokai ultimate to sort of dissuade the dive.
Peach wisely hovering his mid laner there, but I think they are going to have to give up this tower sometime in the next minute or so because Elramir is not going anywhere. Still got the ultimate, still got the Herald. Maybe the resets come through regardless though, and they'll revisit at a later date.
So, getting to the point now where Unicorns are falling behind in this early game again, reminiscent a little bit of game 1. Of course, that was where we saw the Rumble the last time as well. In that game, it was some heroics, particularly from Mask actually on the Cassiopeia, to keep himself individually ahead. They won't have that this game though. Going to take a little while for this Viktor to come online. It's not going to be a Rod of Ages build, so at least it's not slowed down in that regards. Also not going to have something like a Seraph's though, so you have no HP, you have no shields. This Viktor is going to have a lot of damage if he reaches his items, but not going to have so much ability to stay alive.
Thank you for bringing up the total goal, because I wanted to mention that Bao and Kofte are both sitting on Kraken Slayers. In game 1, they didn't have the ability to kill through these tanks. They had a Xayah and they had a Lissandra, not necessarily the biggest tank killers. Right here, both sitting on 2 Kraken Slayers, ever scaling AD carries. They're gonna be shredding through these tanks that have actually fallen behind tempo, which means they're not gonna have as many resources and defenses to play that front line yet.
You're looking at least 1,000 gold or so in every one of your carry positions ahead of their opposition. It's just less than that for Destroy. It's significantly more than that for Kofte. Powers Funky has to cleanse. The turnaround's pretty good as Elramir has to flash away. Now Venour can maybe pull people back. The Equalizer forces Funky away to the burn. The Demonic Embrace will give him the sweet embrace of death. Destroy.
I don't think anyone expected Elramir to play that aggressive in the mid lane.
Oh no. I've said it before, it's low-hanging fruit. He's going to have to throw down the ultimate Elramir Arctic Assault over the wall, and he's about to burn away as well. Destroy gets that one as well.
Okay, they've warmed up. I think Wildcats have warmed up here. They're all on the same page. Elramir, I think he really needed that Gragas game to really get into this best-of series. He's playing the exact same way. He sees champion, he engages champion. Even if his ultimates have missed and the slow has landed, he goes straight all in. And what a great chain of follow-up he's been having from his team.
Yeah, this is just such a different game from the rest of the series, isn't it? Funky not able to outplay, Mask not able to outplay, Venour held down as well. It's just a comprehensive loss from the Unicorns. Destroy on his Rumble. Game 1 couldn't make it work, but as you said, the damage is there across the board this time, and the Wildcats, they're just taking off.
And it doesn't end here because they just do it all over again. Peach tries to collapse and is caught in a very difficult position.
Yeah, and I think, again, this is so important for Wildcats to play like this, to have this cohesiveness in their play, to have the follow-up, to play as a unit, going 0-2 down a series when you could have almost won game 1 and you threw it, knowing that you can come back, knowing that you still have the team play, you still have the calls, you can still play aggressive and it works. I think does wonders to the psychology of a player as well. We said we also wanted to see Destroy come out of lane a winner. 1.2k up, 2-0 on the Rumble.
You know what they're starting to move towards? It's starting to smell a little bit like silver, a little bit like that game 5.
Some scrapies.
And, you know, it's not been too long since we saw that 5-game series in the finals. Heretics and BDS Academy last summer went the full distance. It was almost a reverse sweep. It was denied in the 5th game. Wildcats would like it to not quite be as similar to that, as they're the ones on the verge of bringing it to that match point after being 2-0 down. First time in this tournament, first time at EMEA Masters for TCL, a region which lost a team in play-ins, lost a team in groups. I think it was bare minimum to reach finals to kind of bolster their fans, bolster the region's chances. They'd quite like it to go the distance. I think they'd quite like it to be in their hands.
Or maybe we turn away from some of those other Greek references, instead go to Hercules, because they would love to go the distance. Absolutely right. A little bit of Disney in there as well. Apologies for that slightly dated reference. But here we are is...
Okay, that didn't happen in ancient Greece, okay? That was just a song.
Well, you don't think Hercules or Heracles was just there singing...
Wait, you mean they didn't have soul music back in those days? Crazy.
Oh dear.
Oh, great. Okay, back to this game. Wildcats, their next objective on their side is most likely going to be this Baron. It's going to be a Cloud Dragon spawning, so it's not one of the most important that you want to be securing, but that Baron can open up bases. You have 2 AD carries that shred towers. With the power of the empowered minions that Baron can give you, you can absolutely shred through their base. 2
items on Destroy, Kofte, Bao, and they are dangerous items indeed. A Night Harvest Demonic Embrace into immobile, non-magic resist, wielding carries, and a AP Maokai. No one wants that. Fight over the blue buff was secured this time around by Peach.
Each wanted it.
Yeah, just about secures it.
Well, the thing is, I think Unicorns probably do want it at this point. These item breakpoints are about as good as it's going to get unless the game really stalls out, and I'm not sure you have the luxury of waiting for that one. You have your clean 2 items on your AD carry. Can you fight around it?
It's this time chosen by the Wildcats. An equalizer in the choke point gets a burn onto Peach and Lexus, but is it as valuable as you might have liked? No Funky, no Mask hit by that one.
I think now you chill back if you're Wildcats. I think your play is over. You don't have Sejuani ult, you don't have Leona ult or Rumble. These are your 3 huge ults to catch catch someone off guard. You wait for your waves in 2 minutes, you try to go again for the Dragon, or you just wait for these ultimates to come up, try to make a pick with the Sejuani. We have seen Wildcats overextend when they have lost these ultimates, but right now it's the chance to just control wave and control vision until they're back up.
Yeah, this time Unicorns forcing the group. They know that a couple of those ultimates are down, particularly that Leona and Rumble are the ones which they can't really avoid. They can't do much about it, nor do they want to be blowing that cleanse on Funky too easily. Now, they find themselves in the top river. I don't think they start this. I don't think they have the damage to do it quickly, nor do they have the tanks to really keep themselves high HP while that happens. But it's a Baron start fended off by the Unicorns, and they'll take that as a small victory.
Parus was kind of around to make sure that nothing was going to happen. All the while, though, Destroy takes the invade and will share some gold with Kofte there. We've got a minute until Soul Point for the side of Wildcats, but that will be a minute's time's problem.
I just want to say huge props to Bao for finding himself through this series. A 2-level advantage over Funky. A solo kill early on, and Kofte wants his turn.
Jumping onto Mass, turning around some fairly decent damage. Hops, busts a shot, auto, and he makes it like Cloud. It is a destruction there. Limit break indeed.
I guess Tristana really does beat Tristana. It really does beat Viktor.
You really had to.
Just throw her over the bus.
You know, I'm just like, I'm going to take the L there. Tristana beat the Viktor.
I think that was also such great mechanical play from Kofte, because Mash could have flashed over his gravity field and the Kofte would have been stuck like Venour is.
All out, takes him to the other side of the wall, but there's a permafrost starting to become available. Rooted in place over the wall. There's Lekcyc debating, going, decides against it.
You know,
Destroy now here. Ultimate coming from Maokai, forced to flash out of Parus, and actually, in goes Elramir to try and buy some space, take it pretty low, beside a heal on up, the equalizer is good! Good God, the damage from that is absolutely brutal. Yes, you turn one back, but now Peach in a difficult position, the tree is felled one more time. It's a logging company out here for Wildcats.
Bao is frontlining right here, he wants blood. This is the AD carry that's chasing everyone down, but that's 4 members remaining, no jungler, means no Baron whatsoever for Wildcats, but you can take your 2 AD carries, take them to the bot side river and try to go for that Dragon.
Seriously high damage coming out of this Xayah. He's getting a little bit worried about a reset coming in from Funky. Of course, the Jinx has a couple of
Look what the pro Elramir is.
But Elramir sits there and goes, yeah, I'll take this one for you. Maybe you'll get me the next time. But Chad tanks up for such a long time that Funky isn't getting that reset very early. He has to sit on that equalizer for a little while too. And this damage is nuts.
It's so much damage. Destroy and Bao putting out mad amounts of DPS right now. And Funky, as you said, had to flash off the equalizer, could not use the Exciter to continue the chase because he was on the other side of the wall. Unfortunately for them, it was a moment where you thought, well, is this where the comeback begins? Is this where Funky on that Jinx begins to turn around those big team fights? It doesn't happen. Bao solos out the Dragon, Soul Point secured. A gold lead of 8,000 odd gold is pretty damn disgusting for the Wildcats. They are in a monumental lead right now in the game.
Now you're in a very difficult map state for the Unicorns. You have been for a while, let's be honest. They tried to group, they tried to find some ways in that mid lane to soak up some ultimates, but they can't do that now. Venour has teleport. Not sure he's got great options. And I don't think Wildcats are going to let them into the river so easily.
3 items on your AD carries. There's the equalizer and the choke point. They're going to throw down the Maokai ultimate, but a solar flare comes through. You're supposed to photosynthesize, but it's just burning him apart. It's a drought for the Unicorns. They're trying to get him out. The Baron is secured. A route onto Venour, but it's not going to turn into too much else. Wildcat gets one. Good hook, but Lekcyc now.
Funky's not there.
Kofte just deletes it. Funky is not there. Finally turns up, but Destroy lives up to his namesake. Killing spree. Kofte on the reset. Rocket jumps forward, and he's heading straight for the moon. Mask goes down next. A buster shot secures it. Godlike he goes. Bao will chase down the final kill. There's nothing to be done, and Wildcats, they can taste it, they can feel it. They're turning into a cleaning crew because the brooms are out. Reverse sweep is on the cards.
And Wildcats, what a turnaround. They invited Unicorns of Love through these choke points with equalizers, with feathers, with Sejuani ultimates, with Leona ultimates, and they're gonna take all of these to the next one.
On to the Nexus turret they go. Lekcyc falls another time. The Wildcats are beginning to roar, all right. Unicorns fall twice in a row. It's game 5, baby. You know what song's coming up.
We're getting a little bit used to those 5-game finals. They had one in last summer.
He just springed off his chair.
And he has every right to. What a great performance, particularly from Parus, from Kofte, and from Elramir to completely shut Mask out of the game. Great macro from them. Great ability to just shut that Viktor off right from the start of the game in the way that they couldn't do in game 1. And now they're bringing it to the brink.
I feel like we've seen this before from Unicorns in the semifinals, in their quarterfinals. They tend to think a little bit ahead of the picture of what does a front to back look like? What does a beautiful front to back look like? Of course, the Viktor is great for your Jinx. Of course, 3 tanks are great in front of your Jinx. But how are you gonna bridge this huge point between your early to mid when your opponents love playing through mid jungle and they have the strongest points there? So I just feel like, again, Unicorns are lovely to go back to the drawing board and be like, listen, we win through these mid jungles. We can still play our tanks, but this mid jungle needs to be strong. And this time, it wasn't, and it was shut down.
And this time, Destroy managed to transition a lead out of top lane into consistently making Funky's life hell. The equalizers were always on top of the Jinx. There was no Thresh Lantern, no real way to keep him safe. And it became a much more cohesive and comprehensive game from the side of Wildcats. I think that was probably their best game of this series, question mark?
It definitely felt like it, particularly in the early game play around mid lane. And we've been saying it pretty much since the semifinals. The era of the LFL is over. Someone has to take the crown of the ERL. Someone has to become the next best region. And it's going to 5 games to determine who's worthy of that.
It's European Old Guards Unicorns of Love Sexy Edition falling twice in a row to bring us to game 5. Desk, take us away. Can the Wildcats finish the job?
Oh, go on, Desk. What do you think? I think they can probably finish the job from this position. Yeah, you're very smart, Desk. Very intelligent. Obviously, I'm not used to being a host, man. Sometimes it comes out, you know, a little bit of
voices
playfulness. The voices, yeah. The voices are definitely saying something to me. But what a game. What a performance by the Wildcats. Like, absolute domination from minute 1. And a lot of it comes down to, again, the synergy between jungle and support and mid laner and their ability to put Mask behind so often.
Yeah, I just feel like being able to not only pick on Mask so freely, right? There was no real response from jungle, from support on the side of the Unicorns, but on top of that, I think just the fact that they have so many non-committal ranged engage tools to just make Mask's life hell, but specifically, of course, Funky, right? How do you play the game into Equalizer, into Leona ult? It just feels impossible pretty much every single time, and you saw it, like Trouble was mentioning in the post-match there. Pretty much any time Funky was on vision and an objective was about to be started, the Equalizer was dropped on his head, but it all started with all of this repeat attention towards the mid lane, so Mask couldn't have any impact on the game.
And I think this was really key because from a draft point of view, picking Viktor into Tristana actually makes a lot of sense. He was also doing really well when it was a 1v1 and even secured a CS advantage for himself. But eventually, when the rest of Wildcats came for him, you know, he just had a difficult time actually, you know, holding his own. And the problem was also that from a teamfight point of view, the Viktor, the Jinx, they don't really have any mobility or ways of defending themselves, while on the other side, Wildcats have Tristana and Xayah, who can both easily peel. So, you know, once early game falls apart, it's so difficult for Unicorns to actually, you know, get access to the carriers and take them down.
Yeah, it really feels like Satsumas are the way to go, you know, something that's easy to peel for, something that works. It's because before when we did the 60-second games, we had is ham, cheese, or bananas good. Anyway, you guys didn't see that. That was in rehearsal anyway. That was a few hours
ago.
Gets
unleashed.
I've had half a Red Bull. I'm ready to go. But yeah, it's really surprising, but also encouraging for the Wildcats how quickly they have turned around the momentum in this series, because it was very Unicorns favored, especially after game 1, where Wildcats had the early game. I think them losing that game, to me, was very much their death knell until we got to game 3 and they started to find a little bit more agency in Parus once again, and also in this game, Destroy really stepping up.
Yeah, and you know, I don't like to be the narrative parrot, as it were, but
no, that's a chicken. It's not a parrot.
But you know, we've recently seen a finals where momentum was very, very important. Obviously, referring to the Mad Lions final against BDS, and it feels like here that Wildcats do have a fair amount of it right now. I don't know. It's always hard to get a read, especially when, like, you know, the players are online, they're not in studio, you don't get to see how they react post-loss and post-win. But, or like, you know, in person, right? It's different seeing it on camera to being in person, seeing them walk off stage. So I think the real difference maker now kind of has to be what the read is, in my opinion, for the draft. Because I was kind of surprised that Unicorns took the Maokai over the Sejuani. I feel like Peaches looked significantly better on the Sejuani ahead of the Maokai, and I think generally it enables the Unicorns a lot more in terms of their own champion pools as well, specifically the solo lanes. Not to broken record about the Galio again, but
sure.
You know, so Yeah, it's a hard position to be in now, because I think now that you've lost 2 games in a row, you need to be able to just restabilize.
And I think, you know, that point is so key, because when you look at these games from the outside as a viewer, you're not emotional in the same way as these players are. Like, at one point, I'm sure all the Unicorns of Love players in the back of their mind, they kind of knew they had it, they thought the game was over. And now, all of a sudden, that momentum goes to Wildcats. And it is really, really difficult being in that position, having to climb back. I hope Sheepy has a good motivational speech ready for his players, because they've played so many games, tried a lot of different strategies. Now, from their point of view, it probably feels like, unless they have some cheesy strategy up their sleeves, that, you know, Wildcats have kind of figured them out. And it's just all about giving the players confidence, really, because they've shown they have what it takes to come out on top. They just cannot let themselves lose from a mental standpoint the way BDS lost to Mad Lions.
Yeah, and that's the thing, isn't it? Because it's not that we think overall Unicorns are the worst team. I think we've seen very high highs from Unicorn. We've seen very high highs from Wildcats as well. But it's about, in this moment, which team collects themselves the best, resets, and gets into the next game. For Wildcats, it's a lot easier. You've just come off 2 wins. You have this draft strategies that's working. And for Unicorns, it's a lot more difficult, because you were 1 game away. You were 1 win away from taking the title.
And it's also worth noting that while Wildcats currently have the momentum, it can pretty quickly swing, because they won these games because they played so well and were so greatly coordinated in the early game. If Unicorns can find a couple of openings themselves, they might throw off Wildcats completely, and then all of a sudden, the momentum is, you know, back in their lane.
All it takes is Peach on a Lee or something, right? A few quick kills in the early game, and immediately the other team's like, oh, we got so close, but now it's starting to be wrested out of our grasp, and you feel like you're useless, and you feel like you can't do anything in those situations. Like, the closest corollary you and I have to it, Jamada, is like solo queue. You know, you get a few kills in the early game, and you feel like you're going to win everything. And sometimes that can be great, because you play the rest of the game out and you win, and sometimes you and your team start doing stupid things in mid-game and then lose the game for that position. But thankfully, these teams are a little bit more practiced at winning with a lead, Jamada.
Yeah, and I will say, it feels like when Wildcats don't have a lead, we've seen it in this series as well, they do look like borderline lost. So I think, Broxy, you're right. Like, if you have Unicorns here in this Game 5 come out and really knock them off their momentum horse, as it were, I think getting back up into the saddle is genuinely a very difficult thing to do in the middle of a game, because I'm sure you've probably experienced it at one point or another in your career, where it's just like you're on this crazy high, you go into Game 5 or you go into what should be the winning game, and then you start losing. It's like, you know, the alarm bells start ringing. So I think, again, it's about, like you mentioned, Medic, keeping the keeping a straight head, ensuring that you're not going too far off the rails. And I think that realistically, if you're Unicorns, read the room and see if that is, you know, I think that is what you have to do to Wildcats. I think you just have to come out and immediately just start swinging.
And I think they also need to make sure that comfort is taken away from Wildcats, because I think it's unacceptable if Bao gets Xayah again. Like, this guy has performed so well in Xayah every game this tournament. It's probably his best champion. And he just keeps getting Xayah over and over, a champion that he's so consistent on, that he's so safe on, and that makes it near impossible for them to, you know, get access to him and actually kill him in teamfights.
Yeah, I think the only game he's lost on Xayah this tournament was game 1 of this series. And maybe that's where Unicorns are getting a bit of self-assuredness in, like, oh, we can give it up, and then the K'Sante deals with it. Like, Venour has had such a good series on the K'Sante, but even in this game, he was just nullified. He wasn't really able to have that same degree of impact. And so I think the question that comes up next for me is, if you're Wildcats, this seems to be working. Do you just stick with this? And if you're Unicorns, do you scrap everything and just go comfort from here, because you know you need that reset? We'll start with you, Jamada.
Yeah, I think you need to just look at comfort for Unicorns now. I think we expect things like the K'Sante to go back into the hands of Venour. Maybe another Peach Lee Sin. I think Mask looks the best when he can actually help skirmish in the early game. I'm just going to say it. I think anytime that this guy is on something that doesn't have agency in the first 15 minutes, Unicorns just don't look like a strong team.
Yeah.
Plain and simple. So I think that we need to see him, whether it's the Galio, whether it's something else, the Lissandra or whatever, it needs to be something where you can actually pair up with Peach and look for picks proactively, because it seems pretty apparent that if they try and play the scaling game, to me, with a team like Wildcats, who are happy to sit on their hands if they have to, they're just going to lose out. We know that they can be very strong team fighters, but at the moment in this series, that's just not how it's going, right? So I think, to me, you need to just try and scrap the team fighting. Go for a 1-3-1 comp if you really have to, at absolute worst case, but I think it has to start with the mid-jungle, and I think it has to actually be a proactive duo.
I agree. Like, it's clearly when Unicorns have looked the best, and Mask has shown time and time again he's able to be proactive. Also from a jungle support point of view, like these guys have shown, they want to be proactive, they want to make plays. They can't really do that if their Viktor is hogging his turret the entire game. So, you know, let them do their thing by locking in a proactive mid laner, try to take control of the early game to throw Wildcats off guard. That is what we need to see from Unicorns.
And from the Wildcats, we just need to see more of the same. 2 wins in a row for them. The Unicorns of Love on the ropes as we get ready for the final game of the finals of the EMEA Masters Spring Tournament. Right after this, cue the music.